Charles, this adventure that Donald Trump has set us upon in Iran is looking less favorable by the day, I think. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm in the middle of a rainstorm here. Monday is my non-tennis day, so that's a nice congruence there. Yeah, I think the central problem with this Iranian fiasco is that there can be no deal with the IRG that leaves the IRGC and the mullahs in place, right? I mean, these people have proven for 47 years that they're not going to change their behavior. They are motivated by things that we don't necessarily understand or will ever understand. They don't appear to care about suffering military defeats. They just keep on fighting and instigating and tripling down. Now, there's talk. Just about 3 hours ago, there was an announcement that Axios put out that the sides have agreed to fresh talks in Qatar. But why do that at this point? What is the point of talking? You're back in listening to these Middle East experts who will head off to the Middle East, most generally flying first class or private, meet in, sumptuous hotels, have fancy dinner after room service after hooker, and issue a press communique saying, the talks are inconclusive, but headed in a productive direction, and then get back on the same private jet to concoct another excuse why they need to fly private again to go back to some hotel. I mean, it's just the IRGC in particular is a hostile and potent military force that has been intervening in the internal affairs of Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, and other places. It has outposts had them in Central America and South America, likely in the United States of America. It's funding politicians, probably in both parties. And, even if we go so far as to structure a treaty with them, they're not a responsible counterparty. They need to be put to the ground. And the mullahs should have no role in governance. If they want it, their religion is interesting, go for it. But they should have no role in governance, and they certainly shouldn't be getting rich off the conflict. Decades ago, I was told that the mullahs take, and probably the IRGC take, about 10% of GDP minimum in direct payments to Swiss bank accounts. I mean, this is it's a fraud.
I thought
And
Swiss bank accounts aren't what they once were. Aren't they not anonymous anymore since 9/11?
that's why I say decades ago. I don't know,
Ah.
what the situation is now. They're probably getting paid in Bitcoin, but and we've seen it. Um, that they'll go into rooms, have good faith discussions, come out with a 14-point plan, and nobody can. The 14-point plan is vague. It's in English. They can always claim it's not translated properly from Farsi. And it's a memorandum of understanding. At this stage, who gives a shit about a memorandum of understanding? I mean, I don't care about them generally speaking. Show me a binding contract with no side letters, in particular, no confidential side letters, which we now know the JCPOA had. I suspected it had, but we know now that it did have it. This enough of this crap. The Strait of Hormuz is either an international waterway through which oil should be and gas can be transported, and if it is, it's useful, or it's not, and it shouldn't be used. But we certainly shouldn't agree to a framework that allows Iran and/or Oman to collect tolls through this, because that's just going to prompt other countries at similar choke points here. For example, on the Strait of Malacca, between I guess it's portions of Indonesia and Malaysia and Singapore. Should they be charging a toll? Should the tolls be charged through Panama or the Red Sea, et cetera? I mean, this is nonsense. And
But doesn't Panama already charge? I mean, that's different. They've got a big giant apparatus there. These straits are just waterways, right? It's not, nobody's maintaining the strait. They're just sort of, we'll kill you if you don't pay.
Yeah, I mean, it's nonsense, and that we should be, at this point, what is it, 5 months, I guess, almost into this conflict?
Yeah.
Um, we're beginning to look kind of foolish here.
Yeah. Beginning?
I mean, but seriously, begin. I mean, you give, we're if we really push this to the point where we risk, for example, the Iranians using a hypersonic missile, if they have one, to take out Tel Aviv, or God forbid, Jerusalem. Um, you know, you want to do what you can to make sure that doesn't happen. But we're now, I think, at a stage where these people, particularly the Iranian foreign minister, who talks shit, constantly, his days should be numbered, right? And this idea that the son of Khamenei is wounded and may speak for the country or may not speak for the country. And we haven't seen that guy, right? Who knows who's actually speaking for Iran? And the risk is that, Vance and or Rubio and or Trump or whatever sign another stupid piece of paper. And then out of the woodwork, somebody says, "Oh, no, 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 Khamenei's son doesn't speak for the country, or we've killed this IRGC guy. Now you got to deal with me." That's bullshit. That's like, I don't know. That's law of the jungle. And at this stage, I think that the mission has to be reopen the Strait of Hormuz and get Iran in a place where it can hold free and fair elections. And if they elect an irresponsible leader who wants to continue the process of meddling around the world to support terrorism, well, unfortunately, we're going to have to take that person out.
I think sadly, the United States has lost a lot of its ability to demand that people hold free and fair elections because we can't even do it here.
Well, I think 2020 proved that we didn't do it.
Yeah.
Not to mention prior elections. What material information was withheld from the American public in 2016? Same question for 2012. What about 2008? What about 2004? I mean, what about 2000? What about 1996? I mean, you can just go back into time.
Hmm. See, this is interesting. I don't know what these things are. Mehr News Agency 14 hours ago says that this Mojtaba Khamenei, he orders pursuit of U.S. Israeli war crimes against Iran. But you're right. Where
Right.
is he? Why doesn't he make, Mullahs social and come out tweeting or something? Like, haven't anybody seen this guy actually speak?
I mean, that was rule number one. And I learned it the hard way. I was representing the Wallenberg family, and Dylan Reed was representing the Wallenberg family and Saab, but I was the point person negotiating against Jim Wolfenson, who was in theory representing Ford Motor Company. And in theory, the outset to the negotiations, he said, "I speak for the board of Ford Motor Company. I've been given authority by the board to conclude this deal." On that basis, we wasted 2 weeks, signed an MOU in London, at the Ford International headquarters there, a townhouse that was desecrated by Henry Ford's wife. Um, and
What do you mean?
we all
How is it
celebrated.
desecrated?
Well, it was a beautiful Georgian townhouse, and she decided that she wanted to turn it into, Carnaby Street 60s style interior with modern furniture, and it was ridiculous. Um,
Charles, are you familiar with this model, the Saab 900 with a tree growing out of the roof? What a stupid photograph this is.
Yeah. And so we celebrated. We went off to Annabelle's, where after, because we thought we had a deal, and Jim Wolfenson was a member. He later became chairman of the World Bank, um, I think under Obama, or that time frame roughly. Anyway, and then at around midnight, Wolfenson said, "Well, I have to go and meet with some woman, a dear friend of my wife and I." He said, "At midnight, yeah, okay." And the next morning, I get a phone call. I'm really embarrassed, Charles, but the board turned the deal down. I said, "Jim, you said you spoke for the board. You had authority, and the deal evaporated."
He's like, did I
Right?
say that? What
Yeah,
I meant
exactly.
was.
Right. And so I learned that the hard way. And in the case of Iran, there's no point in holding negotiations with, one team over here that's going to say one thing, and then this Moshava Khomeini says, "Oh, by the way, I actually speak for the country, and I'm going to report Israel and the United States to war for war crimes." You know, we're not doing that deal. At least I wouldn't do that deal.
Oh, I completely forgot that today was the Pride Parade. I was busy with other stuff. People in the comments are reminding us of that. As another completely unrelated non sequitur, Charles, I'm not sure if you know this, but Saab was actually, I mean, it's defunct now, but when it was funked, it was actually quite ahead of its time. I didn't particularly like these cars, and I didn't find them very reliable, but they were a bit of a breakthrough in that they invented the turbocharger wastegate and really kind of saw the future in terms of smaller, more efficient turbocharged engines rather than big gas burning, V6s and V8s. So, too bad Swedish people kind of don't know what they're doing because this went out of business.
No, they were indeed ahead of their time, and at the time, this was I think 1990 or thereabouts. It was 1990. Um, our own analysis and experts reinforced the idea that unless you sell 100,000 units of a specific brand inside the United States, your car company is not going to work. It's a vanity project. Back then in 1990, and that was Saab's problem. The focus groups at the time showed that they were very popular in Vermont with Democrats and and with lesbians. Really popular. And that's
Well, again, I think the
kind of a niche market.
turbocharger and its ability to have a lot of torque and climb hills and things like that. I mean, because they were designed in Sweden, they also had a lot of technology for cold starting. And it was an interesting and quirky car that, like I said, it was ahead of its time and it foresaw lots and lots and lots of cars use small engines with turbochargers now, but it was pretty revolutionary in the 70s when they started doing it.
No, I agree.
But
I agree.
anyway, back to Iran. Kind of a disaster, and we've got the 250th anniversary coming up next week. This can't possibly be what Donald Trump wanted from all of this. I mean, he said back in February or March that this would be over in 2 weeks, and it keeps it's a little bit like herpes. It keeps coming back.
Yeah, exactly. And this idea that the Iranians are playing, they believe that we want talks, right? That Trump wants to talk. So they're our famous intermediaries in Qatar and Pakistan, of all places, can easily waste time with Iranians getting somebody to say, "Oh yeah, we'll hold talks again," and then when the right before the talks happen, the Iranians will provoke us. We'll do something, and then they won't show up at the talks. I mean, there's no point in talking at this. I would like to see a uh, surrender treaty or whatever. I mean, that's the only thing I want to talk about. Fuck an MOU.
The thing is, I think they realize that I saw this article. This is not it, but I saw some article that was sort of stating the obvious, which is that the United States military, in many ways, relies on these incredibly sophisticated, what they said was exquisite and expensive weaponry. And it's great for shock and awe campaigns that last for a couple days, but they're quickly depleted and extremely expensive and complicated to manufacture and replenish and everything like that. So there's all these efforts underway by all these, sort of wannabe Palmer Luckey types to to stand up manufacturing facilities that can rapidly manufacture large numbers of sophisticated missiles in terms of guided systems and GPS driven this and
Right.
that. And I mean, it's maybe Iran knows that and they figure, all right, well, the longer this goes on, they're sort of the defendant in this action. And so time is on their side, dragging it out.
Yeah, again, I would caution that report comes from the New York Times. I don't trust anything from the New York Times. And remember, what we're really in, the battle inside Iran is important, but what we're really in is the mother of all battles between democratic socialists uh, oligarchs who support them, governments who support them, and everybody else. That's the real battle. And the New York Times is all in for democratic socialism. And the argument, and they're all in for Zoran Mondani. So this is, this is theater, Rand Paul. It's theater. That we have a very short window of time, 60 days at this point, 65 maybe, in which Donald Trump must have victories against these rogue judges, must have a free and fair election in 2026, must have a reckoning for what happened in 2020, and actually from 20, I would say maybe 12 onwards. And the Iran debacle is an unfortunate distraction in all this.
Not related, but I don't know if you can see this. Speaking of reckoning, I don't know if you can see this footage of Venezuela. What a wreck. Look at that.
Yeah, really sad.
Yeah.
But of course, we live on a planet that is going to have these type of events constantly.
Some
Right?
genius on Twitter was saying, oh, if you don't believe in climate change, look around at all the earthquakes happening. And I don't know how people think climate change causes earthquakes. The best scientists in the world don't know what really causes earthquakes or how to predict them or where they originate from. I mean, they know it's tectonic plates shifting, but they can't accurately predict earthquakes.
Right. And, the old 80-20 rule, 70% of the surface of the planet is ocean or water, 70. 30% is land. You want to think about, things that are likely affecting global weather patterns, you've got to understand what's going on in the ocean first, I would think. But these are, the people who are simultaneously asking for billions or trillions of dollars to fight climate change are the very same people who probably got as far as sixth grade math and, and balked at dissecting a frog in elementary biology. These are people who don't understand science, the scientific method, basic math, finance, economics, and have limited attention spans. Or probably their brains are fried ADHD brains. And I'm not saying people with ADHD can't be smart, but you're not necessarily going to say, well, forget about what the 8 billion people on the planet want to do. Let's just have Bill Gates, decide for us with no advanced scientific training what the planet should do the next millennium because he's rich, or George Soros because he's a successful speculator, But to return to the mullahs in Iran, um, I think we're in a place where we understand that we have not eliminated. We should understand that we have not eliminated all of Iran's offensive military capabilities, and we need to do that. Separately overnight, just right now, your time, I think there have been raids across Iraq that people suspect, and the analysis I've read is that it's perhaps U.S. linked people inside Iraq, rounding up people inside Iraq who are being accused of corruption, but most likely are pro-Iranian Shia elements inside Iraq. Because the last thing we want now is to have to fight Iran and Iraq again.
That went so well the first time.
Yeah, the first several times.
How's the Taliban doing? Anybody call them lately?
Yeah, they're busy making sure that women, boys get raped, women don't go to school, and no religion other than Islam is tolerated inside the borders of a country that's, heading right back to the Middle Ages. Thanks for that, by the way, Joe Biden.
Pakistan says it carried out a ground operation and strikes along the Afghan border, killing 29 militants.
Yeah. Pakistan
said that. Oh, Moscow, Taliban forged military alliance in power grab after U.S. Afghanistan exit. What the hell would Moscow, why would Russians want to hang out with the Taliban?
Yeah, I think they learned their lesson in Afghanistan a long time ago. It was a very painful lesson for them.
A full-fledged partnership with the Taliban? Did they? Oh my God.
Who knows?
They've
I
signed a
guess that
military cooperation, probably to get U.S. equipment that they have.
probably.
That's what that would be, isn't it? Joe
I
Biden
would guess.
really is so stupid. He was somewhere yesterday or something talking about how stupid he is. He was campaigning or something.
Yeah, he was at some Democratic fundraising event, and again, fumbled his way off the stage. I mean, he really should just, I don't know, stay home, get a nice bathrobe and some comfy slippers and a lazy boy chair. Find a cat or a dog to pet. Stay away from little kids and shut the fuck up.
He's blasting Trump about the reflecting pool, but they've arrested a bunch of people. And obviously, they have videos of people. Trump said they were cutting the pool and pulling pieces out of it. I mean, what the hell is the matter with somebody? Hate Trump all you want, but you're going to go attack a pool? That's stupid.
Again, these are the kind of stunts that Hillary Clinton loves and Bill Clinton loves, and the people the West Wing fans love this kind of. I mean, we're in a mentality where one side, the progressives now, can say without evidence that the system is irretrievably broken and only they know how to fix it, and they will, by all means necessary, move to capture all the levers of power because only they are the good people and they're fighting against evil. That's the way they think. And the Republicans talk big and are spineless. Even at this point, Trump, what the fuck is going on, with reforming the land of NGOs? Why is that so complicated?
Yeah, they don't seem to be doing it. I've heard Scott Bessent talking about it, but it's like, hey, haven't you been at this for a year and a half? What the hell's going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's more or less the same crew in the IRS that sits on top of the tax exempt organizations unit. That entire crew, it needs to be weeded out, replaced, and then one has to go back over ground and say, all right, exactly. Presidential foundations, going back to H.W. Bush or Reagan, how do you go from Ronald Reagan getting $3 million from, I think, a house in Brentwood worth $3 million from Republicans who felt that he had sacrificed 8 years during the presidency and he deserved to live out his years in a nice home. How do you go from that to this chucklehead B-Rock Obama sitting on top of $1 billion foundation that doesn't hold any records, any physical records? With 4 mansions that we know of, hundreds of millions of dollars of income that he and his family have derived from his selfless public service. And what's next? If this president is allowed to stand, you can imagine Trump towers around the world, assuming even if he passes away, because his sons and daughters are in the business. Are we going to have a $1 trillion Trump presidential library?
They're going to put the Qatari 747 in the lobby. The New York Post is telling us about how the NYPD commissioner, Sal Greco would say the soccer mom, was standing with armed gay cops on the sidelines of the New York City Pride March after slamming organizers for barring them. Oh, they were barred? I didn't know they were barred. How can you bar the police commissioner from going to a parade?
Who knows? I mean, again, New York City. I mean, I hope I'll always remember the good times that I had in portions of my life in New York City. But I have about as much interest in going back to New York City as I do in having a vomit smoothie. I mean, it's just.
Oh, that sounds good. Well, Charles, on that delicious note, we're going to head over to the First Amendment Forum. People could join us on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. Charles will be sharing recipes with us, and people can also get it on subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Also, people who subscribe to me on X at JG_CSTT. Thanks to everyone who sponsors the show.